I'm Indy Neidell.
I'm Spartacus Olsson.
And I'm Anna Deinhard.
And this is another exciting edition of the Unscripted Out of the Foxholes, where Sparty and I sit here next to a fire in springtime, which is quite warm. And Anna asks us a bunch of your questions about the Second World War, and we answer them as best we can, pretty much off the cuff, right?
Okay, here we go.
Okay, Andy wants to know, what were Germany's thoughts of losing the war? Throughout the series, there isn't much discussion on what Germany, Hitler, and German high command thoughts were about losing the war. They never seem to talk about it, and they never seem to think about it when they are making decisions and planning operations. Which is strange to me, because Hitler has been to jail. The Allies are going to have to kill Hitler and the German high command for the things that they've done. Hitler and the Nazis are going to go down as some of the most evil people in all of history. Yet, they don't seem to discuss or even think about it. They keep destroying, pillaging, and killing. They don't seem to care what happens to them and what happens to Germany after the war if they lose.
Oh, there are so many things to unpack here.
Andy,
wait a minute.
if that is your real name, I think Sparty wants to answer this.
Yeah. Well, okay, let's start with the clear and obvious one. Indy has talked about this in spades in the series. I have talked about this in spades in the series. We have talked about it together even in a very, very long extra episode about how Hitler goes down. But I'm going to try to simplify this to 3 different areas now,
Andy.
right? And we're going to start with Hitler. So if you go back and watch the Death of Hitler episode where he commits suicide, and we covered that, you will see that no less than 20 times in the 2 months that he spends in the bunker, the 2 last months of his life, does he come back to the same statement. If Germany cannot win this war, Germany must be destroyed.
It does not deserve to exist.
Exactly.
It cannot.
He's been saying this.
He's been saying it publicly. He's been saying it to his gang. He's been saying it to his gang. And they weren't just going around pillaging. There was actual method to the pillaging.
Yes.
There were reasons. If you're going to pillage, you should have a method.
We're going to get to that in a second. But let's just dwell on Hitler for a moment there. He also said it to the Danish and I think Bulgarian foreign minister. I don't remember exactly which foreign ministers. Already in 1941, he said, if the Germans are not up to the task of winning this war, then the German race deserves to be destroyed.
It is an existential war against the Judeo-Bolshevik coalition. If the Germans are not up to defeating them, then Germans deserve to be destroyed.
He says it over and over again, and this is Hitler's take on it. So that's one thing, right? Some people might agree with this, some don't. Dönitz obviously agrees with it.
So it's like, hey, by destruction.
Yeah.
Can
we define that, please?
So, yeah.
So that's one side.
Dönitz was a bit of a wuss, you know.
He was, but he really helped him with that destruction.
Yeah,
but anyway, so which others did not. I'm not going to go.
Yeah, but I mean, he was wishy-washy in terms of the.
He was terrible. But yes. So and then there's another side to it. The goal of this war was, contrary to popular belief, not the traditional conquer and hold.
It's not Genghis
like
Khan. This is not take as much land as you can.
It's not take it, tax it, and live off it. That's not what it was about. There is that component in Lebensraum, but the goal of the war was the extermination of the Jewish people in Europe and the decimation of the Slavic people in Europe in order to make room for the German race.
And to subjugate the Slavs as an under race. They had the whole plans for what educational level they were allowed to have and stuff, so they'd better to fulfill their role as a subjugated people.
The Hunger Plan, it was called, and it had...
Which is not if you're on the receiving end of the Hunger Plan, that's not a happy plan.
That is correct. So, there's that. Now, what happens when Germany starts losing? You have the Himmlers of the world, you have the Hitlers of the world, and you have the Bachselewskis of the world and others that are firm believers in this whole ideology. They really believe it. So this is to them not the time to slow down with the murdering in the Holocaust or the decimation of the Slavs, because they believe that even if they lose the war, they can at least sort of win it by killing all of these people. So they continue killing to the very last day for the simple reason that this is the goal of the war. This is what they want to achieve, and that is where they want to go to. So it's a suicide it's a suicide murder story at the end of the day. From 1944 to May 1945, we're talking about a murder-suicide plot orchestrated by Hitler, where he will murder his enemies and then commit suicide with the German people together with them. That's basically.
Are you comparing this to Romeo and Juliet?
No, I'm not. More like Mark Antony and Cleopatra.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, okay, yeah. But you're starting to get the body count up there at least. Then.
Yeah, you are. So that is one component, and then there is the third component, and that one is not insignificant. You have a large section of people, and Himmler eventually joins this part of it, actually. At the end, yeah. Who think that they have an out, and that the out is that the anti-Bolshevik sentiments of the West are going to win the West over in a final showdown where the West will switch sides and fight the Soviet Union together with them. They really, really believe
they genuinely think that's going to happen.
They talk about it all the time. They come up with plots how to do it. There is the whole separate peace treaty for Italy, which is part of that. There is Himmler negotiating with the Jewish Congress, which is stupid, but he's doing that in order to then use the remaining Jewish people who are still alive as hostages to exchange for having.
Yeah, we literally covered this stuff every week or two.
We did, yes.
For the last 5 years of the war.
And so you got that part of it as well. Of course, now if you look at that, right? So you have three different components here, and they are at terrible conflict with each other, because Hitler's idea is no longer to win the war, it's to lose the war as hard as you can so that Germany gets destroyed. Himmler and his fanatics at first are trying to fulfill their racial ideology, which stands in absolute opposition to the possibility of getting any separate peace with anyone, because that's just pissing everybody off even more than before.
They don't realize how adamant the Allies, including Soviet Union, are opposed to a separate peace.
Yeah, I mean, Stalin is afraid actually that the West will go for this thing as well, although he's totally wrong. Churchill and Roosevelt have absolutely no.
After all this, let's
thoughts.
have another war against the Soviets.
Yeah, they're not interested at all. I mean, Churchill has this idea about.
Patton was in for it.
Yeah, and Churchill has that idea of Operation Unthinkable, but it is unthinkable, and therefore it doesn't happen. So I mean, that's all just paper games.
Yeah. Okay, and that's our answer, Andy.
Tyler Stefanov.
Cool name.
Yeah.
Very cool name.
It's the same thing, backwards and forwards. It's a palindrome.
Okay.
Made you think. I made you guys think.
For 1 second. Yeah. So, he wants to know, why didn't Germany invade Switzerland? I've heard of a number of different reasons as to why Hitler didn't get around to invading Switzerland, even though he hated the mere existence of the country, from what I've heard.
The Germans are allergic to chocolate, aren't they?
Yeah.
The question is done. So, why didn't they take the opportunity to do so when the country was completely surrounded?
Well, it's always completely surrounded
by mountains.
It's surrounded by first of all, it wasn't actually surrounded by Axis powers and Axis satellites until after Operation Torch, when Darlanche and when the Germans took over what had been the Vichy French and administered it directly. Vichy France was not part of Nazi Germany. So it was not surrounded by the enemy when a neutral country like Vichy France was next to it. But that's technicality. Ideologically, Switzerland was not part of what Hitler wanted to do. Remember, Hitler wanted to destroy the Judeo-Bolshevik whatever and to subjugate the Slavic races. Right. Now, he had to attack Denmark and Norway to secure the Alivare iron ore and an ice-free port from Narvik. Obviously, he needed the Low Countries because you're going to have to deal with Britain and stuff through that. You have reasons for all the other places you took. There's no overriding reason to attack Switzerland. Now, the Swiss, during when the war in the West began, when the Battle of France and the Battle of the Low Countries began, mobilized like 400,000 men. And Switzerland was they had a serious military training, serious military background, people from 15 to 60. They mobilized like a tenth of the country.
All of them had knives.
Yeah, they had knives. And scissors. And a toothpick, except many of them lost the toothpick the first day that they had, because that happens. That always happens.
The needle, although the needle's only in the handmade ones.
Yes, this is true. So, if you're going to attack any country, even a country that's just a flat plain, and has 400,000 people under arms, you're going to need several 100,000 people to attack them. If you're going to attack a mountainous country where they have already previously set up so that all of the roads, the bridges, all of the infrastructure can easily be mined and destroyed as they retreat to a central redoubt, and that central redoubt is a mountainous area that even the locals think we could hold out forever in here, even though they'd have to give up like 75% of the country. You're going to need at least 1 million men to do that. Why would Germany send 1 million men to do that when they could use those 1 million men in the East, in the West, in North Africa, in places where they really actively had to fight? Now, we've seen when there'll be battles and wars, even when, there's 3 million people fighting in this area of the Soviet Union on both sides. But still, we need one more division here. This all plays a part. And people don't realize it. It's not just throwing a bunch of force into it. Every single division, every single army is important. Oh, if only we had one more battalion, we would have held this place, right? There's no way you're going to waste 1 million men attacking Switzerland when the Swiss provide a stable economic unity, I guess you'd call it. Stable economy, not a wartime economy, that Germany can really take advantage because they're neutral. You can also buy things through Switzerland because they're neutral that they can get from other countries that you cannot get other places. Specifically rubber, like in the First World War, the tanks the Germans first used in the West, they actually ate up the roads because they didn't have rubber on them. They destroyed the roads as they were driving. You still need rubber, so the Allies have most of the rubber, especially once you're losing the Africa campaign. Did the Germans hate Switzerland? I don't think they hated Switzerland. They hated the Soviets.
Yeah.
The Soviets. They weren't
Jewish people.
They weren't particularly fond of the Jews or the Romani as well. They weren't particularly fond. They didn't care for them. Is how Hitler.
That is one way of putting it. I think that's also important to look at the historical context here. Switzerland is one of the oldest countries in Europe for a very good reason. All of the reasons that you just mentioned. Even in ancient times, or in medieval times, when Switzerland was founded, it was more or less impossible to take this country because even if you did invade it, which many people tried, Maximilian, lots of people tried, they would, as Indy said, retreat into the mountains and they would fight a guerrilla warfare that would be very, very costly.
And there's this question also has an assumption in it that what Hitler and his gang wanted to do was just take over a bunch of countries. That was not the goal of Nazi Germany. It was not, we're going to take over all of Europe. There's plenty of countries they didn't attack. They didn't attack Spain. They didn't attack Sweden. They didn't attack the Swiss. They have reasons for all of these things. They were specific goals, and you have specific forces allocated to it. I think it is a real fallacy to say, this country is right here. They could have had one more country. If only they had taken the 2 million men that it would have taken and the 2 years necessary, or maybe in 1940 it would have only taken 8 months, but still, If
you look at it from Hitler's viewpoint and how he viewed how this war was going to play out when he started playing his war games in his mind in the 1920s, his hope was that all of Western Europe, France, Belgium, the Netherlands, Scandinavia, all of it, would join the racial bliss and become brother nations. That's how he saw it. He did not see it as this was going to be Germany.
That's why he invented the high five. People think it was Glenn Burke, the baseball player, and who actually, if you look it up on what I've heard the internet, it'll say it's Glenn Burke. It's actually Adolf Hitler in the late 20s, because that was his signal to tell the rest of Western Europe they're going to be racial brotherhood and stuff. Who are you going to believe, me or the internet?
Always you, Indy.
Thank you.
Always you.
That's why you're here.
So there was no ideological plan from Hitler's side to actually control Western Europe as a part of Germany.
Yeah, that
was all just tactics and strategy in order to come to what was his real goal, which was to expand eastward and gain Lebensraum
at the expense of the Slavs, the Jews,
Yeah.
and the Soviets. So. All right.
Indiana Jones.
The question is from Indiana Jones.
Yes,
Well,
it
Indiana
is.
Jones is what.
Well, hi, Indiana.
Hi, Indiana. I like that name for some reason.
For some reason, yeah. So Indiana.
Always fun to see you in the comments and in the questions.
Yeah, definitely.
So he wants to know, why didn't the Germans use the Vichy French Army in Operation Barbarossa?
Wait, so why didn't the Germans send the French troops to fight in Barbarossa? Okay, well, before I answer that, I would say there were French troops involved in Barbarossa, but that was a volunteer French legion. And it was volunteers, like 13,000 or so applied, and they only took like 5,000. So it was really, even though you wanted all the men you could have over there, this was a fairly elite unit. And they fought exclusively on the Eastern Front there, but then even ended up fighting in the Battle of Berlin. But as for Germany using the Vichy French troops, why doesn't Honduras send Mexican troops into battle against somebody else? Because it's a different country. We think of Vichy France as, oh, France was conquered and it's part of... It's no. Vichy France was literally the heir to the French Third Republic. It used the same symbolism. It was officially recognized by the United States as this is France. This is not Gaullist France. Gaullist France was the upstart rebellion. This was official France. Of course, there, sure, Germany could tell them what to do. They occupied the northern half of the country. Yeah, sure, and they occupied that's fine. That's in the country telling what to do. But it is a separate country. It's not a puppet. It's not like Manchukuo or Slovakia. You don't just run the army and that army. I mean, what, like 1.5 million of that army was in Germany because they'd been captured as prisoners during the Battle of France.
It's also questionable how motivated they would have been, considering that they were very much split between the Free French and the Vichy French and all of that. How do you know if they're even going to fight, and even if you could force them?
Vichy France was neutral as well. They weren't allied with Germany. They weren't allied with anybody. They were a neutral nation. They weren't going to declare war on anyone. And for Germany to force them or whatever to send tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of French troops to the Eastern Front, France would have had to declare war on the Soviet Union, and the French
would have brought them to war with all of the Allies.
Yes.
Which would have meant that in North Africa, which was part of continental France at the time, Algeria was actually part of France.
Yes.
They would now be at war again with their previous allies. It would be a mess.
You have to think of in terms of politics like this. Germany wasn't like this. You think, oh, all powerful, they could force everybody to do this. Remember, we've talked about how things failed with them trying to get Franco to do stuff in Spain.
Canaris kind of orchestrated
yeah,
that.
But still, they couldn't get Franco. I mean, Franco knew that, he's getting most of his food thanks to American and British help. So you're like, well, why am I going to... Sure, I appreciate... I like the way you think, but I also like the way my people eat. No, it would have to be a volunteer force. Also, you'd have to find officers and people that actually spoke French or French soldiers who spoke German willingly. And Germany and France, they get a bit of history between them. There has been some animosity. I don't know if you're a history buff, but but in the past there was some animosity. It would be completely unfeasible to even if you had 200,000 great French troops, for them to fight under the Nazi German flag in the east against the Soviet Union. That is not going to happen. You can't force them to do that. You can't. Yeah,
it's not going to work.
There's still the international politics. Yeah, I've explained it as best as I can explain it.
They had also fairly recently fought valiantly against the Wehrmacht in France and Belgium.
Yeah, that's the way it is. Well, that was fun, right?
That was great.
That was pretty good. Well done, Anna. Well done, Sparty. Well done.
Interesting questions.
Yes, very. And so that is it for today from Unscripted Out of the Foxholes.
And if you want one of your questions answered, the best way to do that is by joining the Time Ghost Army at one of our officer levels, and we will, at some point, guaranteed, answer your question. Might take a while.
Or you can do something that makes yourself look just like Anna, like a doppelganger, and then replace her the next time we're filming these, and then sort of sneak your question in.
That's a possibility.
That's a possibility. It's probably cheaper to just join the Time Ghost Army at one of the higher levels. But, do you, right?
Yeah, it's very expensive to be me.
Yeah, that's what we hear. Okay.
Well, we know.
All right. Well, once again, that is it for us. Don't forget to subscribe and all those things. And Excelsior!